Rebel Rouser. I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7. We're at episode number 1623, and I told the community on our Patreon page, patreon.com/SW7x7, I shared with them that sometime this week I would be doing an update on The Mandalorian as part of our weekly update that I post usually on Sundays over at Patreon. I share what's going to be in the week ahead, or at least what I think is going to be in the week ahead. And, most of the times, it's either right on or it's at least the best prediction I have until news breaks. And then sometimes news actually breaks related to what it is I'm thinking about talking about on the show for a given week or a given day. And that is exactly what's happened with The Mandalorian. So yesterday, the official cast for The Mandalorian was announced, and most of the names on there actually had been being kicked around as rumors. There are a few names on there that are new to the discussion, and a couple of names on there that are just downright head scratching on the one hand, and yet also kind of exciting in their own way. So first of all, Pedro Pascal, who had been rumored as in talks for the lead, is in fact the lead, is the Mandalorian, our lone gunfighter. And he, of course, is from Narcos and Game of Thrones, so very well-regarded actor, and so congratulations to Pedro. I think we're off to a running start. Joining the cast include Gina Carano, who is most recently from Deadpool, but who is also, I guess, an accomplished MMA fighter. We also have Giancarlo Esposito, who played a critical supporting role in the Breaking Bad TV series. We also have Emily Swallow from, among other things, Supernatural, and Omid Abtani from American Gods. And then things start to get unusual. For a start, Carl Weathers, I would say, is, the least of the unusual ones. Yes, Apollo Creed is going to be in The Mandalorian, so that is kind of exciting in its way. Then we have Nick Nolte. So Nick Nolte is also joining, and I don't think it could have gotten any weirder unless you had cast Gary Busey instead of Nick Nolte. But yeah, Nick Nolte is going to be in this thing. And then the weirdest of all. So saying it couldn't have gotten weirder unless you'd cast Gary Busey, well, no. It got weird when they cast Werner Herzog. And Werner Herzog, if you're not familiar with him, is mostly a director of independent films and some very strange and occasionally dark ones at that, and also has some very unusual choices for guest appearances in movies and TV shows when you consider the kind of work that he does. I think most recently he, and probably most hysterically, was a guest on Parks and Recreation, where he was selling a house to Chris Pratt and Aubrey Plaza. And yeah, that scene is just hysterical. And I think probably one of the things that I get to enjoy most about Werner Herzog is not necessarily Werner himself, but the impersonation that Paul F. Tompkins, the comedian, does of him on the Doug Loves Movies podcast every so often, which is a rather hysterical podcast. It's not always family friendly, so fair warning. But if you ever happen to scroll through the feed for Doug Loves Movies and you look at the guest listings and you see in quotes Werner Herzog, because it's not really Werner, it's the comedian Paul F. Tompkins doing the impersonation, please stop what you're doing and listen to a couple of those episodes, because you just might lose your mind laughing. And with the announcement, of course, is a quote from executive producer and showrunner Jon Favreau saying, "We're having a great time working with this incredibly talented group and excited for everyone to see what we're up to." Yeah. And I'm laughing because there's a Twitter account that has been around for a while, Werner Twertzog, Twertzog on Twitter. It's not Werner Herzog, but it's somebody impersonating him lovingly so. And the Star Wars related tweets coming out of there are already happening, including ones like this one: "Do or do not, both are meaningless," and "Midichlorians are real, but we are an illusion." And I guess you really have to do it in a very deadpan sort of German Bavarian accent or something like that, which I'm just not going to be able to do. I mean, I'll try it for you. "Do or do not, both are meaningless." And it's terrible. Never mind. I'm not going to do that again. But I think you get the idea. Somebody has to be doing this Oh, for the love of every Force ghost, somebody has to start spouting Star Wars lines in the voice of Werner Herzog. I swear it's got to happen. Anyway, that I may just end up doing a week of podcasts of that alone. I won't really, but that's how much it makes me happy. Anyway, so yeah, this Mandalorian cast is really unusual to say the least. And so one hopes that it means that we are in for something, very creatively exciting and stretching what our idea of Star Wars could be. And I think that's probably the thing that's more important than anything else. I mean, if we're talking about the Skywalker saga ending in 2019 and having to conceive of Star Wars without this particular defining attribute to it, then, what is Star Wars? And what can it be? And certainly in the expanded universe, we had a lot of different interpretations of Star Wars, and some, of course, more successful than others, but certainly some that went into, different genre routes, and we're getting that potential idea expressed with things like, say, the Cassian Andor series, which is going to be more of a spy espionage kind of thing. So, what does an espionage story look like set in the Star Wars universe? And, what does a Western potentially, I know Star Wars is already kind of a Western to begin with, but, what does a straight up Western look like? And yet, what does a Western look like when you have Nick Nolte and Carl Weathers and Werner Herzog and Giancarlo Esposito and Gina Carano and Emily Swallow? Like, what does it look like with that? And does it still look like Star Wars? And does it expand our idea of what Star Wars can be and make Star Wars even more awesome? That, I think, is really the big question. And that is mostly going to do it for the podcast today, except for one last Werner Herzog tweet that I'll share with you. But before I go, just to let me say, as always, please subscribe to the show wherever you happen to like catching it. And please also consider joining the community at patreon.com/SW7X7 as well. Werner Herzog says, "I survived the Clone Wars by wearing a dead man's coat." Oh gosh, it's just so silly. And from me, one last thing, which is, of course, may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2018 Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it!